definitely hard for my co-founder and I because we had built a prior business completely based on our design skills, right? We won awards based on our design skills. All the things that we identified with in ourselves and in our abilities and our talent was around, you know, design. And to be like, hey, like running experiments is what matters now, right? And data is what matters now. And it's like, well, fuck, the intern can come in and be better than me.
Wow.
Right? That's scary.
Hey everybody, I'm Blake from Allsmith and you're watching After the Exit. It's the show where I interview CEOs after they've sold their startup and have them share the lessons that they've learned in blood about business, about relationships, and life. And look, you can learn a couple tips from how they built it, but the real wisdom, the moral of the story, comes at the end, after the exit. Today I'm really excited to introduce you to my friend Chris Bergman, former CEO of Choremonster. Before Choremonster, Chris dropped out of high school and became the art director at a skate magazine in San Diego. He then started building websites and built an app development company called Wiseacre Digital. In 2011, he and his friend had an idea for an app that would make it fun for kids to do chores, called Choremonster. With only a concept, they got into the Brandery Accelerator in Cincinnati, Ohio. Over the course of their business, they raised a pre-seed round from Cincy Tech in Cincinnati in 2011, a seed round from Detroit Venture Partners in 2013, and got into the Disney Accelerator in Los Angeles in 2014. After shopping the company around for sale, he ended up taking an acqui-hire deal with Verizon in 2018. Thank you for doing this.
Hey, bud.
I know, this is really great. I'm really happy that we're doing this.
Yeah.
The reason I'm most excited about doing this is that whenever you talk about any experience you have, I feel like I have a direct pipeline into your brain. And into your heart. Like, you don't have a lot of filter, which I really appreciate. And I think that people...
Not many people appreciate it.
Yeah, no, but it's for me, I find myself most comfortable around people like you because I know where I stand. And I don't like not knowing where I stand with people.
Sure.
And so I also think it's really helpful for anybody who's listening or watching because like they can actually hear your internal process through your process with your startup. Mm-hmm. So thanks for being that way and for doing this with me.
Oh,
quick caveat to you and viewers at home. I am a father of 5 kids. And they're all in this house right now, upstairs above us. So if we hear any screams or pitter-pattering of sorts, don't worry. I don't think anyone's being murdered. It just comes with the territory. So, yeah. Great. You got a list of, 15 different lessons that you learned through how many years?
Being an entrepreneur 15 years, but doing Choremonster specifically 7. I believe
7 years. Yeah. And so we're just going to kind of go one by one. If you want to explain them deeper, great. If you feel like it stands alone, that's fine too. So
I'm just going to let them all stand alone.
It's a 2-minute episode. Yeah. So cool. All right. Lesson number 1. You said venture capital has very specific goals.
Yeah, for sure, man. I mean, I feel like this sort of falls under like the thing that many founders say after doing this once. Like, this is a pretty typical response where if you're going to take venture capital and that's a route that you want, they're looking for a 10x or they're going to get rid of your company. There's no in between, really, right? And so I think in taking that investment, just be aware of where the goals are. The goal isn't like, hey, let's operate cash flow positive for 10 years, right? The goal is let's exit at 10x, and everything that we do up until that point has to align towards that goal. And that can be antithetical to what your product is or you serving your customers or whatever, right? Or where you may be. So just be aware of that going in. And I heard that, and it took VC money at the time just to learn that. I didn't know anything about venture capital when we first started, and learned a lot, and have yet to take venture capital for my current company.
Was there a point that it dawned on you that this was the case, that venture capital it's a specific narrow world? Did you know that going into it?
Yeah. So like you're told that, right? Just like
you went through the Brandery, and
there
was some probably information.
There was definitely structure. And we went through the Brandery Accelerator in Cincinnati in 2011. So there wasn't the resources that exist today. There weren't many accelerators at all, especially outside of the Valley. And we started that program with a logo and a napkin of wireframes, truly, like, which doesn't exist. You can't do that now. And so came in just not knowing anything about the way that a tech startup could be structured, right? Like, we had run our own businesses as businesses, service oriented businesses. And so this whole idea of like, hey, like, we're going to give you a ton of money and you're going to go build stuff and optimize it for 5 years and then sell it off was completely new to me. So
even some of your intuitions were probably literally in the wrong direction because of running businesses before that.
absolutely, right? And but at the time it was like, oh well, that sounds cool. I like money. Like, let's give this a shot, right? And so I always knew that was the case and knew that was the goal. But there were definitely specific moments where it's like, oh shit, this is one of those things where like we have to chase this as opposed to that, because this leads to a higher exit and it positions us for very specific M&A, and this serves our customers and our users and that kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely times where that happened and you have to be like, oh yep, that's the choice I made. Let's go talk to the board. Let's make sure the board wants to do that, those kind of things.
Yeah. I discovered the same thing along the path, and I didn't know it going into it. And there's an analogy that I had. Was, you remember those little egg things you can get at the grocery store? I don't know if they still have them.
Kinder eggs?
It's a chocolate egg, like a Kinder egg. Yeah. It's a chocolate egg, but they would have a dinosaur inside. Do you remember those when we were kids? Yeah. And so I feel like investing in a seed startup is this, right? They get this thing and they don't know what's inside. And what do they want it to be? What dinosaur do you want it to be?
The investor or the founder?
What does everybody want? In literal terms, what dinosaur do people want?
The Velociraptor.
Yeah, Velociraptor or T-Rex.
I knew you were fishing for T-Rex.
Yeah. Everybody wants a T-Rex,
yeah.
Right? And the problem was that sometimes you open up the egg and it's like Triceratops.
Yeah.
You're like, cool, it's a Triceratops, but it's not the thing. So T-Rex is a hyper-growth business that can continue taking market with network effects and just can grow forever and become a behemoth billion-dollar company. Sometimes you open up the egg, you get into the startup, and you realize, oh, this is a business, but it's not a startup. And at that point, that's when the VC says next, and just kind of throws it.
Yeah.
Right? Or they try to melt it. They get out a magnifying glass and try to melt it and shape it into a T-Rex, and that typically doesn't work very well.
Right, and I mean, the other option is like go raise a bunch more money so you can burn it faster, so you can just sort of fake organic user acquisition and buy your users and
pretend. Yes.
Yeah, and I mean there's a bunch of different ways to do it, right? Like but that if you're just a normal business, you're getting cut and you won't survive.
Yes.
In that particular kind of formula or that particular structure of a VC backed tech startup.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good for people to know that.
Yes.
And I don't think it's bad.
Correct.
But it's a path, and you're actually saying no to a lot of other paths.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's really good.
Which can be freeing in some ways, right? Like, I think it's great to have a very clear goal when you set out, where you're like, look, man, like, we have this North Star of exiting for 10x. And so that solves a lot of choices and questions that you may have early on, right? Like, one of our big ones, just as an example, is like when we first launched, we were a subscription-based business model. Got 2% conversion to paid, which in that market was pretty good. It was average, right? But we had 42 million households in the US with kids between the ages of 4 and 12. And so if you convert only 2% of those, that's not a 10x model, right? So there's an example of where we decided, hey, we could make this work, but it's never going to get us to a $100 million business. So we're just going to go free and figure it out, because our goal is to get to a $100 million business, not, whatever else.
I literally did exactly that analysis with our subscription app in front of the business on a whiteboard. And it freaked everybody out a lot, because I think I came to that knowledge literally out loud in front of everybody.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, shoot, we have to go free now.
Yeah.
And it was like, I think you came to that a little bit earlier than I did. Yeah. That's amazing. Well, actually, talk about that. So your second was avoid assumptions, create hypotheses, and fucking test everything.
Yes, fucking test everything. So I think one of the big takeaways for me in going through the journey, the 7-year journey of running, especially a consumer-based startup, was create a culture of hypotheses, right? I think a lot of people, especially like our product was very creative with a capital C, right? Like farting animated monsters and goofiness everywhere, and so it's very easy to get when your product is that, which is all assumptions, like creative design. I'm not talking UX. I'm talking actual like creation of animations and illustration, those kind of things, is all assumption, right? Like you kind of have to go build it and make it and see if people like it, right? But you're creating art based on intuition and experience, and not data for the most part up front. And so the culture is built that way, and then to go, okay, there's a product now that 4 million people use, we have to make decisions by the data that we're receiving from them, and so it really goes from art to science. For us, at least, it went from art to science pretty specifically, and you have, you're working with the same group of people that made a lot of art for a long time. And so I think one of our key ways to move it towards a science was saying, look, there's no such thing as an idea. Ideas don't exist. Everything is a hypothesis. So if you have a hypothesis of, I think the app can be better in this way or that way or whatever, you have to start your sentence with, my hypothesis is, and then you're on the hook for figuring out how to test for that hypothesis, right? And there's a million different ways you can run experiments, but we got very good at running experiments at Choremonster, to where we tried to run daily experiments, right? Like just doing different conversion rates for different pieces in the app. We had a whole tool set based around experimentation in our platform altogether. And so I think getting to a place where your culture is much more about testing hypotheses versus ideas, big ideas, and selling big ideas, right? But if you test a hypothesis, then it's just the data's there. There's no selling to be done.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the person who has hypotheses who get validated often, those people become trusted sources within the organization, right? Instead of just being able to sell it really well, it's like, oh, that person has a track record. It's like, let's test it. That's how you build clout, is like the success of your tests.
I guess. I mean, I don't think clout matters. Kinda like when you build a culture of hypothesis, like
you feel like anybody could.
Yeah. And I mean, I think there's an advantage to that, right? Like you could be an intern and have no clout and be like, well, I think this is the case, and it's like, all right, go run off and run your experiment, and then they can come back with zero clout and say, this is what I found by running that. We increased our conversion rate by 42% by doing this.
Yeah. No clout.
And so I think it's actually a very diplomatic approach. I don't want clout in my company.
Equalizer.
Yeah, yes. I don't think that's not a thing that, I mean, if you're trying to build a collaborative company, that shit shouldn't matter, man. Like at all.
It's just pure truth.
Yeah.
Was that a pretty big shift? I mean, because a lot of your background is design and is art.
Yeah, for sure.
Was that hard for you personally? Was that hard for other people in the company?
Yeah. I mean, it was definitely hard for my co-founder and I, because we had built a prior business completely based on our design skills, right? We won awards based on our design skills. All the things that we identified with in ourselves and in our abilities and our talent was around, design. And to be like, hey, like running experiments is what matters now, right? And data is what matters now. And it's like, well, fuck, the intern can come in and be better than me.
Wow.
Right? That's scary. That's super
That's a
scary.
real blow to your ego.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I have a gigantic ego. So, that was really, really hard. And I mean, the company shifted after that happened, for sure.
Were there any, was there anything you read or saw or modeled yourself after? How did you learn that skill?
Yeah, no. So we did that when we did Disney Accelerator. The guy that ran Disney Accelerator at the time, Cody Sims, who's now executive director at Techstars, was what was his job prior to that? He was some type of product manager, senior product manager at Yahoo, and so was really into data-driven decision making, and kind of instilled that in us in a way that we really needed at the time. And he saw kind of this, I think there's a lot of times, especially when you have a company that's lived that long, you definitely have sort of growth spurts, right? And where big change happens in a very short period of time. And he was central to us really honing in on what our product is and how to optimize it for sure.
And inform that with data. Which that probably maps to your next one too, which is number 3. You said what you value in your product may not be what your users value.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think that came through data.
Absolutely.
What's the story behind that?
Yeah. What's the story behind that? I don't know if I have a specific story behind that.
What did you value in your product?
Yeah, I mean, I think a great example is like, we had built this sort of ecosystem of monsters, collectible monsters in our product. And when we, and assumed that like that's why people loved it, right? And then ultimately realized that people just loved that we were solving a problem for them. Like it had much less to do with the monsters. I mean, the monsters made it intrinsically fun to interact with the app, but they weren't coming there for the monsters. They were coming there to get their hour screen time or their cash or whatever their parents may set up as a reward.
And so then once you realized that, did it change your behavior?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, I think.
How did you realize that?
Interviewing users, surveys. Really, you could also see it sort of on the data of the interaction with the monsters themselves, right? Like, versus the interaction with like reward redemption, and then so realized that sort of through that, and then reallocated resources. We pitched a whole. When I say pitch, I mean we threw away a whole game that we were going to add to the app that involved, now you're going to get a house and you'll have a house of monsters and sort of all this other pieces. And we realized that's not why people interact with our products. So, there goes. I mean, the upside is like, I think I was able to get like $300,000 back in the budget because we weren't doing it. But like, like coming to that realization of like, oh, like if we add this, it's not going to affect user retention. It's not going to affect user engagement. Like that's not why people are here.
How much of that was quantitative versus qualitative when you were talking? Because I feel like actually talking with customers is hard.
Yeah.
Like there's even a logistical
Yeah, I mean, I'd say
like,
it's mostly quantitative. I mean, I think it was much more looking at time in app and where it was spent.
Okay. Well,
right.
Do you mind if I ask this is kind of technical, but I think some people want to hear it. Like, were you using like Google Analytics on this, or were you using like what was?
Yeah, well, we had proprietary stuff, right?
Oh, okay.
So
you built your own metrics dashboards, and you were tracking different pieces.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, because our app was super complicated from that standpoint, like there wasn't anything out of the box that we could use, really.
You realize I went to one of your weekly meetings. When I started instituting weekly meetings, I wanted to see how to do good weekly meetings, and somebody told me that I should go to yours. Do you remember this? I went to your office and I sat
in a weekly meeting.
Yeah, you guys did your
OKRs.
Yeah, it was long and boring and confrontational. Like, none of the things I like.
Yeah,
like, it was
sure.
But you're like, hey, you didn't hit this number. What happened here? Like it was a lot of like, it was confrontational, and it was also like every person in the organization had some number that they were accountable for.
Yeah.
I was surprised by that. Yeah. I think I saw my impression of you was much more on the artistic and maybe even the leader side of the feelies. And then this felt way more analytical.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're good at what you do, you make it look easy. Right? So, and I like being perceived as nonchalant. Is that fair? I don't know. You know me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're not a formal person.
So I don't like people seeing me actually work. I don't, it's not a fun thing to share.
Sure. Yeah. Well, again, I didn't have fun at that meeting.
Right. Yeah. Right. And but that's you got to work really fucking hard to do this, and
use both sides of your brain.
Yeah. Yeah. And whatever is necessary for the business to move forward is the thing that you focus on, and you do that, right? Like what's interesting is now I make video games, which is all left side. Like there's so little analytics that matter until you have live services and a game sort of in market. Like I'm writing a script for a trailer right now. Like it's very, very much more left side and creative and all that good stuff. So some days I really miss having to be analytical.
Yeah. I think that's why a lot of generalists find themselves as CEOs.
Yeah.
Is that you actually enjoy having a little bit of this and a little bit of that and kind of balancing it out some.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I mean, for me, I think one of my favorite things in the world is to find people that are more talented than me, which is pretty easy. To your point about generalists, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, where's the expert? Like, how can I get, I mean, product manager is a good example, right? Like when it comes to analytics and sort of that stuff, finding how do I find a killer product manager that can do what I do, but a million times better.
Yeah, that's really good. Okay, so it's interesting because you just are talking about the science side, but then sometimes you have to die on some hills. And so you said number 4 was die on some hills.
Yeah.
And you said specifically we refused to allow parents to take away points.
Yes.
Talk about that.
Yeah. So I mean, like, I think
well, first, as a context, this is a incentive app, right? So you're incentivizing.
Choremonster is a web and mobile app to allow parents and kids to actually enjoy doing chores. Kids gain points and turn them in for real life rewards, like an hour of Xbox, television show, canoe trip, or sharp knives. For every chore the child completes, they get a ticket to the Monster Carnival where they can earn over 100 different interactive monsters or a consolation prize like a jar of farts, dirty underwear, or stinky socks. With Choremonster, your kids will beg to do chores.
Wow.
Yeah. You
just did that for the first time just now. That's incredible.
Yeah, first time.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's helpful context though. So it's essentially you're rewarding kids for
complete chores.
Yes. Yeah. And you said this is a hill that you would die on.
Absolutely.
We refuse to allow parents to take away points.
Yeah. So that was a big ask from our users constantly. Was like, I want to punish my kids.
So the data is telling you we should be able to do this.
And so this is really where it's like, this is, for me at least, this is where it's like, this is the fucking thing that I want to put out in the world, and I refuse to not have it be that, right? And so for us, the product had to be about positivity and a safe space for kids. Like, we never wanted to make it negative reinforcement for children. And then what's neat is like, that was like an assumption I made early on. And then as I learned a lot about child development, right, and building sort of the skills that kids need to become independent adults and those kind of things, that validated my assumption that like you have, if you want kids to engage with this, negative reinforcement can't be a part of it, right? So, but
if you found out the opposite, I don't know if you would have changed on that, right? Like you actually, this is a belief.
Yeah, absolutely.
Internally first.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is why, I grew up in a really shitty environment, like growing up, and one of our missions, especially, so Choremonster then got rebranded as Family Tech, and our tagline was, or our mission was to make every home a joyful place, right? And like having an app that punishes kids doesn't make a joyful home. So it was really very kind of clear that we were never going to do that.
Yeah, so that was a real value, and that you actually said, I'm going to go against what customers want.
Yeah.
Potentially against revenue.
Yeah.
Potentially against data, like whatever. Yeah. And you're saying.
And it always served the product. I mean, it was always we got user engagement on the child side because of it, right? Like we would have lost an insane amount of user engagement on the child side if it was a negative reinforcement tool as opposed to a positive reinforcement tool.
Yeah. How many hills did you have to die?
I mean, that was the big one that I remember.
This is important. It's important to have some hills.
Yeah.
But you don't get like 20 of them.
No, like 1 to 3 maybe, right? Like, I think that was a big one. Kind of going back to like cultural, intellectual honesty was another big one, right? Like across the entire organization, I think was really important. And, I mean, I think those are the two that come to mind.
Yeah, I think when you see somebody who has 10 core values as a first year startup, I'm like,
but you're on the wrong.
Dead, or those aren't values.
Yeah,
you're going to be shooting one at a time in the head.
I mean, I think we've been really lucky in that my co-founder and I we had at this point built a lot of mobile products for people that weren't us, kind of knew what we wanted to put out into the world, and it really goes back to that, right? Like, I think it's so tiring, especially if you're if you'd like to be a founder, you'd like to be an entrepreneur, right? And people are like, don't do it unless it's something that keeps you up at night. I fucking hate that terminology because like I sleep fine, like you know what I mean? But like there's things that like I have to put out into the world. Choremonster being one of them, right? Like it was something that had to exist. The thing I'm working on now has to exist for my own, like, I'm doing it for no one but myself. For this thing to
it's a compulsion.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that'll drive you a lot longer, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely. For sure.
Okay, so talk about some of the fallout of that. Number 5, you said you will lose friends and be a villain in someone's life.
Yeah.
You gave me that speech, I remember, a couple of years ago when we were getting a beer at Lackman's. You
Yeah.
talked about being the villain.
Yeah.
Say some more on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the burden of leadership, for sure. And again, this really even kind of goes back to sort of like having VC money and how your goal is sort of centered around exiting versus product and those kind of things. But like, I mean, I lost, the best example is my co-founder. Like, he and I had worked together for 4 years and 4 or 5 years prior, running a business together, had a lot of fun together, loved it, loved starting this company. And then we hit a level where we had to make choices and he had to move on and lost a friend that day. Right. And I think, the reality is if you run a company, you're going to have to fire people at some point. For me, I think if you're batting 300 in hires, you're doing really, really well. So like 2 out of 3 people that you hire, there's going to come a day where like, they're going to fucking hate you. Right.
Yep.
And I fired people that are doing all the right things, man. And yeah, everything that we asked of them, and it just isn't working. It's not fitting. It's, we're not getting the growth that we need. We're not, a million reasons.
Yeah.
Right. But like, if you get fired, you're going to take it personally, no matter what.
You try to take that away from someone, and actually, I think it takes them of their dignity.
Yeah.
Like if you actually really allow them to hate you.
Yeah. Well, like, yeah, right. Like, I've seen people I've seen leaders shame the people that they're firing, right? Which is bullshit. And so for me, it's just like, as somebody that like really needs people to like him, it's very important to me that people like me.
Yeah.
Right. To have people just like not like you is hard, and it hurts. It hurts my feelings.
Yeah.
But
the worst part is that you're the one who's being proactive.
Yeah.
You're injuring the person.
Yeah, you're making the choice, right?
Yes.
And it's your decision, and so just I had to really learn, like, I got to be okay with the fact that, like, for some of these people, like, they're just gonna fucking hate me, and
I'm the bad guy.
That's it.
Yeah.
There's no, in their narrative where they're the hero, I'm the villain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Having a year or 2 away from Choremonster, does it make you look at that differently?
There's less baggage to it, I would say. I don't know. I definitely, there's a lot of things I did differently with my current company as far as starting, which we've talked about. One of those being like knowing that you might be a villain in somebody's life when you hire them.
You might not be as open or even interpret as this is a buddy.
Yeah. And I think it's been weird because like COVID kind of solved a lot of those problems anyway. We used to we'd have happy hour every Friday night with, whoever could make it and all that stuff. There's a lot less of that now, a lot less socializing in general. And it's also different now because I'm pushing 40 and the people we're hiring are 22, 25. They don't want to spend time with me anyway. So, I don't blame them.
Yeah.
So it's just different, I think. But when you're, when we started Choremonster, I think I was 28, 29. And you think when you start a company you're working 100-hour weeks, you're like, well, we're going to be together forever because we've forged our friendship in these fires. And then to be like, oh no, it's only if it makes sense. And as soon as it doesn't,
and now you hate me,
it's gone.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've
also tried to get a lot better at helping people after I've let them go. Let's get them placed. Let's make sure they have good opportunities moving forward, and that kind of thing.
Yeah. I've noticed there's things you can do to forever injure the relationship in the firing process. But if you kind of just hold your tongue and almost get clinical about it, sometimes I've found 18 months later, it might circle back.
Oh yeah.
And it's typically not in the same level that it was before.
Sure.
It's different,
yeah.
But it's not tainted.
Yeah.
And my mistake was trying to convince people to agree with me and me firing them.
Oh yeah, Blake, you're right.
That went great.
You should let me go.
Right, exactly. I was like, why did I? And so it got.
That's definitely ego right there.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah, I need validation that I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And over time I just realized like this should be a 7-minute conversation.
Yeah, actually, I learned how to do it well by watching Hard Knocks, which is the HBO documentary about football training camp. Because there's an episode every season where the coach has to cut 20 to 30 people. So you see him bring them in, cut them, and that process I've definitely adopted. You
watched how he did it, and was it a short process?
Very short process.
I think people are surprised that it's supposed to be short.
Yeah.
But people as soon as they hear the news, they want to get out of that room. They don't want to be there.
Nobody wants to be
there. You just got to make it real short and sweet.
Yeah.
That's great. You talk about working habits. 100 hours a week is not sustainable.
Correct.
You actually worked 100 hours a week?
Yeah.
That's so much time.
So much time.
People talk about like, oh yeah, I worked 80 or 90 hours.
Yeah.
I'm like, I've worked 80 or 90 hours a handful of times.
Yeah.
That you have no life.
Yeah.
Yeah. You literally sleep and then work.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I remember our CTO had a sleeping bag under his desk. Yeah, it's not, and granted that it wasn't 100 hours full stop for 7 years, but
sure. But you actually said it's not sustainable.
Yeah. But even, I mean, now it's interesting. Like now I probably work 40 to 50 hours a week and feel like I'm retired a little bit, and that's great too. And I find that those 40 to 50 hours are way more optimized, and I'm much more present for them. But yeah, man, I just sort of the idealization of your work consuming your entire life is just, I think, really unhealthy. Really, really unhealthy. And I also think it's a lot easier to feel that way when like you have kids and a wife, and you sort of have this whole thing going, where
there's some nobility.
Yeah.
Dignity. It's like, well, I'm saying no to work because I'm saying
because
yes
of my
to
family.
Right, but if you don't have that,
right, like what excuse do you
therefore
have?
You should have 100 hours.
Right, exactly. And like, where do you get rest, man? I'm a big proponent of rest to work as opposed to working to the weekend or whatever. Right, like start at a place. If you can start your week I meditate every morning, only for like 7 minutes. Like it doesn't take long, but just like, all right, before this chaos that's ahead of me for this day happens, I'm going to sit here and be mindful and be present so I can walk into that stuff prepared.
Yeah, I feel like there's so much more in it's not sustainable. Like I feel like everybody knows that thing. Was there a wake up call moment for you when you said like,
dude, I was severely depressed at the end, suicidal completely. My wife had a I don't know an action plan for suicide for me. Wow. Right. We had rules around if I was feeling suicidal, I had to call, and she'd come drop everything, come pick me up, all that stuff. I hope you're okay with me talking about this, Nick. So that's a huge wake up call, right? It's like, I don't want to live. Well, that's probably, there's some unhealthiness there. Yeah.
So you didn't adjust course as much in the company as more as like post the company.
For sure.
It's like, I'm never doing that again. But you were going to pedal to the metal the whole way.
Yeah, absolutely.
That felt like, tell me if I'm wrong, it felt like that was the culture of those first couple classes of Randry. It seemed like a glorification of that thing. Was that true?
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
And it's like Elon Musk works 90 hours a week. I guess it's just that thing. Because like,
there's this pressure of if you don't do this, you won't succeed.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And
whereas, is that untrue?
I think it's untrue. I'll find out if it's untrue, but it feels untrue. Right. My conclusion is, I don't want to succeed on those terms. Right.
Yeah.
I want to succeed and be happy and be kind and have enough energy for my kids and have enough energy for my friends and like have a full life. Like there's such little time, man, such little time. And so I want to make sure I make the most of that time and not, spend the next 10 years just deeply immersed in my company and not doing anything else ever again.
Yeah, I almost wonder if some of it has to do with what fuels you.
Sure.
And like you're a relational person. I'm also a relational person. Like I need that in order to. If I stay up, I can be superhuman with whatever hours.
Absolutely.
I have.
Yeah, but
if
that
I
down,
get
man,
down,
fuck it.
I'm done.
Real bad.
Yes.
Yeah.
And for
real
me,
bad.
those connections are actually that's the fuel, and you have to know that about yourself.
Yes.
And my theory is that Elon Musk's what keeps him up is achievement.
Yeah.
And so he achieves, and that gives him more energy, which then makes him achieve. And I think there is a class of person who that's their fuel.
Yeah.
I'm not that person.
I am an Enneagram 3, which is that person.
That's
which is an achiever. Yeah. But for me, it's much more about making other people like me.
Yes, that's the way you measure.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not dollars or something like that that actually gives you that. That's really interesting. Talk about on people. Number 7, you said choose people you enjoy being around.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a much more recent conclusion, I think, man. You're going to be around these people a lot.
I felt like the people that you were around, it seems like you really enjoy the people that you're around. That's interesting.
I'm good at faking it. No, I'm kidding. I think but like as time progressed, you need very specialized people, right? Like Choremonster, we hired some pretty high-end salespeople, and they're very salesy, and whenever I was around them, I just kind of felt miserable. And even in my new company, we had somebody that we needed this role filled, and there's not a lot of people that could fill it, and we're just gonna have to deal with them. And the upside is 3 weeks in, I was like, I can't do this. Not gonna happen. And it's all about me, right? It's all about I need, if this person's gonna suck all this energy from me, that's hurting the rest of my team that doesn't get me at full 100%, right? So let's get rid of the people that are energy vultures and just make it people that are sort of life-giving. And I think then that's become a qualification to work in my company, man. You have to be a life-giving person.
To you? To
me, yeah.
I guess, would you do the same thing if it's sucking life out of someone on the team but not sucking life out of you?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're a tight-knit team and small. And I think I haven't run into that issue yet. Let's put it that way. It seems like if somebody,
you love this person and everyone else hates them,
that hasn't happened.
That would suck.
Yeah. I mean, I think when you start with hey, I'm going to build a team of life-giving people, those energy vultures sort of affect everyone the same way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a character that there's always somebody who's applying who's incredibly validated, incredibly skilled, who you just don't like.
Right.
And it's tempting to hire that person, especially when you get rewarded with maybe even more funding.
Whoa,
you hired that person.
Yeah, at Team Slide.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah. In the little circle, their little head in the circle. Yes. Yeah.
Yep. And I've just learned that
it's short-sighted.
And again, it goes back to I don't know how much longer I'm going to be on this world. I don't want to spend more time with this person. So
there's an experiential part, but there's also the legitimate part, which is you won't be as good of a leader.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Talk about number 8. You said your job isn't your identity.
Yeah, that was a big one, man. I mean, literally, there were years where people couldn't remember my name, so they just called me Choremonster.
They would just say, "Hey, Choremonster."
Yeah, right, because I was the founder of the company.
Yeah.
And I believe
it really hurt when it was your wife. That's what that was. You're I knew I had a problem.
She didn't see me ever, so it didn't. I don't think she got the opportunity. I think, and I definitely bought in, man, and really bought in again, sort of going into this well, it has to be my identity for me to be successful, right? And having having moved on from that company and still existing as a human, I was
turns out
there's people that just valued me for me, right? You're sitting here, right? Yeah. Which was a surprise to me. I didn't expect that. Oh, for sure, which is fine. But I do have to say, there's very few people that were that for me. Most of them I still talk to and are still helpful and still rooting for me as a human and want to connect semi-regular. I mean, I'm playing Among Us tonight with some old investors, right? As an example. But I think I was really surprised to see those people still be there after it was over. for me,
Right.
because I thought that's all they valued me for.
Yes.
Was that thing that I made, and they're like, no, like you're just kind of funny, weird. I was like, oh, cool, you know.
How are you approaching your company now differently because of that?
Well, one, I think I'm making a better product because I'm able to not have it be a part of my like.
Say this. This is important.
Well, now you put me on this.
Sorry,
me on this
no,
pressure.
but it's that this is idea that you're making something better because you're not putting your identity in it.
Correct.
That's super important.
Yes. Because like I think you can look at data better. You can sort of look at the market landscape better. You can see it as a CEO as opposed to as a creator. And I think you still need to be a creator. Like I'm absolutely, but I'm making a video game about 4 cheerleaders from outer space. Like I am not the person that should be making this video game on paper. You know what I mean? And it's all, it's about female relationships and identity and sort of all these other things. And like, don't get me wrong, we have 3 other writers on the game. It's not me writing it mostly, thank God. But I think I couldn't have made that game if I felt like that's who I was. Right? Like I wouldn't have given myself permission to make that game, I think. Because I'm none of those things. I'm not, you know what I mean? And so I think that makes me better now that it's not all who I am. And then like also like it's, I think for me, like I'm going from a tech startup into the video game industry, which both industries are very difficult to be good at, right? And then to sort of cross over and do the other one. Well, just because I'm in the video game industry now doesn't mean I'm not a tech startup guy. Like I still view the world in a lot of the same ways that I did 10 years ago. And so I'm not going to go into this industry without, just having it be my entire identity. It's like, oh, he's a games guy now. Like, no, man, like I mentor a ton of startups. Like I want to help people be successful. Like I think it's super important. And just as another example of like, I don't want to be all in on one thing, because who I am as a person is sort of the spectrum of some really dumb shit that I enjoy, and then some really meaningful shit that I enjoy. Like being a DJ or being a dad, like that's sort of the ends of that spectrum for me. And then in the middle is kind of everything else.
Yeah, it's not a big enough container. Like a single role in a company is not a big enough container to contain a human being.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I always envied the people that, in my companies that could go home and not think about the 50 million problems that the company's having.
Is there a shortcut for a first-time founder to not fall into this trap?
I mean, maybe you got therapy earlier than me. Maybe, you focus on mental health earlier. I think being proactive, like that's the first, if I meet a new founder who's early, that's the first thing I say is get a therapist and make sure you're focusing on mental health and be aware of your feelings and your emotions and your thoughts, and do body scans. And I think it is totally possible to be that.
You got to do the work. You
got to do the work on yourself, though, right? And I was a very unhealthy human for a very long time. Still not great. Like I could be better.
Reveals that it actually, you actually start to see your own flaws played out financially and organizationally.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
It's like a big mirror.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Right. And
very embarrassing.
Well, and as a leader too, your team mirrors you, right? And you're like, well, they do this, and it kind of pisses me. Oh, it's because I'm that way.
Yeah.
And I'm instilling that into this company. Let's
Freud's
fix that.
just looking over your shoulder.
Oh yeah,
like, I got you again.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's good. Number 9, there's no passion in this one. It just says investors have typically never made a goddamn thing.
Yeah. There's no compassion. Yeah. I mean, there's obviously huge exceptions to that, right? Entrepreneurs have become, or founders have become investors, but like on the whole, man, I vibe really well with people that make shit. I'm all about making shit. I'm all about creating, and investors are not that person. They don't understand. They say they do. They don't understand the motivation. They don't understand the frustration. They don't understand the yearning to output something that is the driver for creators, right? And the burden that comes with that even. But like, don't buy their bullshit.
Their bullshit in terms of them saying that they can empathize, or
well, yes, definitely, and then also their opinions about your product, right? Or I mean, it's different. And don't get me wrong, like this is the cynical side of it. There's absolutely a hopeful, good side about the mentorship that I've gained from investors, and like, you know, how they've helped me grow both professionally and personally. And so I'm not. I'll put it this way: there's definitely investors that were pissed that I had hills that I died on.
And they didn't empathize. Like, oh,
they didn't understand why, right?
Yes.
Like, yeah.
I think the best investors, even if they don't empathize, identify that, oh, this is fuel. And in order for this thing to keep working, we have to get on this thing, right?
Yeah.
The worst investors I've had are people who say, why are you not running this company exactly how I would run it?
Right, precisely.
And it's like, then you run it.
Yeah.
You know, like.
Whoa. I'm over here because I get to sit in a chair and go to a board meeting once a quarter.
Right.
That's, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, okay. I'm going to keep it going. Number 10, value friendships that are made through the process. Still connected. You're still connected to many of those people.
100%. 100%. And I mean, we have regular reunions of the people that worked at Choremonster, and then even, you know, whenever I have one investor in my new company. It's not a VC, and he was an investor in my last company, and I'm still extremely close with people that I've made through that, friendships that I've made through that journey of, you know, 7 years, and everybody's doing different stuff, and I think it's super neat to see their growth and you know, them going out and taking swings on things, and that mutual respect that happens is I can't. Those are some of my best friends, man. Like, I can't find better people than that.
How do you balance that with also the fact that some of them you would have to fire or could have to fire? Like, there's a tension in that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I have fired some of them.
But then there's still your friends.
Yeah, absolutely.
That gives people hope.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, gosh, there's so, you know, I think we forget about this because we all live in tech startup people is what I'm saying, or startup people, or whatever you want to call us. We forget about this because we live in this bubble that's just this echo chamber of like everybody's doing tech startups and everyone's an entrepreneur, and like we're pretty fucking rare, man. Like, I forget that.
It's statistically very rare.
Yeah. And like, especially if you're like wired to be that, and you can't be anything else. And so when I find a like-minded person and somebody that's sort of wired similarly, oh man, that's life-giving. That's super, like that's energizing. And then, you know, when you can call on that person 5 to 10 years later because you have a particular problem or you need help or you need whatever, and they're there, a lot of why they're there is because, you know, you guys went through stuff together.
Yeah, that shared, the meaning that comes from working with someone else. There's nothing that compares to that thing. Yeah.
Collaborators. Yeah. Conspirators.
Yes, conspirators.
Yeah,
I like that. You said number 11, it's I think referring to startups, are really a long-term marriage.
Big time. Yeah. I mean, I now, this might be another one on there, I'm not sure if it's not, but like, I knew whatever my next thing was going to take 10 years, right? That learning that, right? Like, when we started Choremonster, it was a side project. We just said yes to stuff. We had no idea how long it was going to take. And it took 10 years, right? Like, so, just be aware if there's somebody that gets on your cap table, they're on your cap table till you can pay them off. And that can be a very, very long time.
Yeah. You're signing up for a long-term relationship. Yeah. I picture the cap table's in-laws in my experience. And that it's like, you think you're marrying your wife.
Yeah.
Right?
But you're marrying your own family.
And then, and that's the cash.
Yeah.
Right? Cash is your wife in this analogy.
Yeah.
We're like, this is great. I love the cash. This is amazing. And you're like, oh, I actually just married into the investor.
Yeah.
And this is going to be, I'm part of that family now.
Yeah.
And, I feel like that's sometimes comes as a surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you haven't talked this to an investor for 6 months and you're trying to get their signature and you find out they like moved to an island or some shit, you know what I mean? Like that stuff happens,
Yeah.
right? And you're like, well, I can't close this deal until I get the signature. You know, I mean, I think that's where like how reliable is this person? How, you know, and then the other part, I had this happen to me, man, where, you know, venture capitalists at a VC firm, for some of them, for many of them, it's a job and they can leave and go to another job.
And the firm is
and
on
you
your
don't
cap table.
Yeah,
Yes.
you don't have that person on your cap table, you have that firm, and you got to deal with that firm.
Yep.
And they may have a different person that might be in your next board meeting that might fucking hate you.
Yep.
And hate your business and just want to get it out off their portfolio as quickly as possible. So I think that's why when you're building these relationships, marriage is the right word.
Yeah, you need some time, and you need to vet the whole family.
Yeah,
not just the one partner that
right.
you like or that likes you.
Right.
Yeah, that's really good. On a separate topic, you said regular life will continue to throw punches.
Yeah, man. My wife got cancer in the middle of running my company.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we've had people pass away.
I'm sure always at a really good time in the business.
Always had we had 2 kids during, I mean, I'm not on your level, but you know, you know.
We were on pace together.
Yeah. I mean, we had our second kid and 4 days later we moved to LA. Right? Like life just continues to throw punches and you never know what it's going to be. You never know, you know, and I mean, you shared your story, right? Like just be ready for it and be mindful that it exists. I think it's easy to just like forget the world exists and you're only focused on your company.
Until the world suddenly
punches you in the
raises
face.
Your hand.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well, how did that affect your work? And how did your work affect that, even as you probably had that?
I mean, I think there's when you have that realization of like, wow, I've not been available and I've not been a good partner. And like, I'm, you know, you can see all my failings sort of up front, right?
In some ways, I mean, you kind of want that, right? You want to actually get pulled out of the business and get that perspective in some ways.
Well, it's a great excuse, right? Like, and you won't do it any other way. Like, I'm still super bad at it, right? Like, that's why my office now is next door to my house, because like that's the only way proximity was the only way I could remember that my family exists, you know, or I'll get too wrapped up in my day to day and not check in with the world around me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Have you found is there anything that you've been able to do to either put like stop gaps for yourself or to remind yourself of like, I'm more than just this project that's happening in front of me? Yeah,
I mean, pre-COVID, we would schedule date nights and make sure they're on the calendar. I think that's just like an easy win. You know, I think I've become very territorial of my weekends. Is the other thing. They're much more like, I'm not gonna. It's like I'd work one weekend out of a month now, which is a lot better.
It's different. Yes.
Yeah, a lot better.
Yeah.
And so I think that's another way. And then really truly proximity. Like we live in the city, and but like I'll just bounce back and forth between my house and my office a couple times a day. Just check in.
I think it's so interesting that the solution to that problem is really basic things like calendar events and location. Yeah. Right. I think people think like, oh, my heart's in the wrong place, or it's like, no, the solution is really straightforward.
Yeah, and the other thing that we do is we do strategize as a family. Like you know, once a year, my wife and I get together and think about what our goals are for the year for the family and for each other. That kind of, but like, it's so tacky to be like, well, treat your family like a company and then you can get good at it. It's like, I don't know. We're still, and then a lot of therapy. Yeah.
But it's that investment. Yeah, that's really good. You touched on this, but I think it's related here. Life really is so short. Do what you love. Yeah, man.
I mean, best example is after Choremonster, I went and worked at Verizon and,
at the mall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I sold phones at the mall. And
He didn't actually work at the mall.
I got
it
that.
is kind of funny.
Yeah. It's good juxtaposition though.
Yeah. We I worked a product for Verizon Smart Family and came in every day having finally sort of succeeded financially, succeeded in, I was way higher up than I should have been for my age and definitely for my background, education wise, and came in every day and was miserable, just utterly miserable and so frustrated with myself because I mean, literally telling myself, like, why the fuck am I so broken? Why am I broken? Why can I not be normal? Why can't I not enjoy this? Why can't I just chill, take the big check, put it in the bank, half-ass working, because my half-ass is not even, is still double anybody else's ass at the that kind of stuff, and couldn't do it, just couldn't do it, and went home with anxiety every day, went home with a headache every day, was angry, and finally just said, I can't do this, and then eventually got to something that I do enjoy every day, and I was like, oh yeah, this is worth it. This is worth pay cuts. This is worth lifestyle changes. This is worth whatever to build a team, spend time around them, work on cool shit, and put it out in the world. Mm-hmm. And imagine if it had taken. Sorry, I didn't mean to step on you.
You finish your thought.
Imagine if it had taken me years to realize that instead of months. That would have been years of anxiety and headaches and anger.
Yes, you would have
lost.
Become that. You would have become that thing.
Yeah, just lost.
Yeah,
right. So,
I feel like it can be paralyzing to hear "do what you love," and then you look at your work in the day, and like I'm curious for you, what percent of your day is love versus like just grind,
getting shit done,
email or correction.
Well, I have a board meeting tomorrow, so let me tell you.
That's just pure love.
Yeah, pure love.
Yeah, but I think it's important to like talk about how do you describe what that's like, because there are a lot of people on the other side of the fence, and they just imagine that you're like at a 10 at all times. And I don't think all human or any human.
Yeah, I think that's very true, man. But like, I mean, one of the things that I learned about myself is I really do love the pressure. I love the pressure. I thrive in it. I love my back against the wall. That is where it's fun, right? I love not having enough resources.
Yep.
And really, truly, it sounds shitty, like weird, but like
you like the risk. It's the same thing. I mean, that's why you skated. It's why I skated. It's like we kind of like living on the edge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love being at that place, and so I think I would back up and probably try to redefine what love means for you, and like if you're like having that feeling of whatever, like I'm working on a board deck this morning, and like I did love it. I really enjoy it. It's annoying. I hate that I have to do it, but I still love it, right?
So
like
that I think that's the definition.
Like, it's like, yeah, but they can coexist. I mean, those emotions can coexist, I think.
Yeah, so you're not in
is it more like the grand like architecture that you're working on is something that you love, so the minutia within that
doesn't bother me at all.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it bothers me a little, but like it's completely tolerable.
Yes.
Right? Like
there's no cognitive dissonance in the work that you're doing.
No, not at all.
And that you're like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah. I mean, dude, like we have some challenges that are really fucking hard and so frustrating because like we can't get it right yet. And we're breaking the engine that we're working in literally to try to make stuff work, right? And it's extremely frustrating. But like I love it. I'm also like really frustrated and angry and upset that we haven't got there yet or whatever, but I still love it. Does that answer? I feel like I've done such a poor job of answering.
No, I think it's helpful. I think you just have to extrapolating like that's very helpful. Because I think some people, myself actually, I would say for myself, sometimes I hear that phrase and I'm like, do I? There's a lot of this I don't love.
Yeah.
But at the macro level, I don't know if I've ever done something that I didn't feel great about doing at the macro level.
Yeah.
And so I think that I've kind of lived in it enough that I don't know if I'm in the water or not, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I enjoy Mondays. That's my favorite day of the week.
Yeah.
Straight up.
I think that's very helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I sometimes feel like a relief. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Most people shouldn't do this.
Yeah. Meaning run a company or start a company.
Get on this. Talk with me.
Yeah, get on talk.
Don't do this.
Don't
anyone.
do this. This is terrible. Yeah, man. I mean, I don't know how else to say that. I think that kind of stands on like you probably don't want to, and you probably shouldn't. I have to. I don't have a choice.
I love this thing.
Yeah.
I think it's really helpful. Yeah, that's good. Tell everybody what you're doing now.
Yeah, so now I am the founder and studio head of Guy Lee Games. My kids' names are Guy and Lee. That's where that came from. Just laziness. And we are working on 3 games currently, but our flagship title is Rah Rah Boom, which is a 4-player co-op beat 'em up about ninja cheerleaders from outer space. That'll be out on PC and console sometime next year, we'll say. And having a blast doing that, making video games, and then also entrepreneur in residence at Techstars, currently working with Matt Life Accelerator there. And then I put out a monthly mix as a DJ at mixcloud.com/BergsDJ.
Nice. Yeah. And you got into that fairly recently.
I came back to it. So I mean, I was a DJ as a kid, like in high school and stuff. That was the only way I could get invited to parties. That's how I learned.
Nice.
So I was a nerd, and like they're not going to invite me. But then once they figured out I could DJ, that's when I started getting invites. So that was sort of my way to be cool.
But then you got into it. I feel like it when I first got to know you, you weren't into it.
Yeah. So what happened? This is a good story. I'm going to tell this story.
All right, go ahead.
So this was FounderCon. What was the year that it was in Cincinnati?
Oh.
2015?
15, I think.
2016? Yeah, probably 2015. FounderCon 2015. I was in charge of the after party. I got Metro Boomin to come out. And I was on stage with him while he DJ'd. And I was like, I forgot how much I love this. I could do this again. And I had bought him the controller that he used that night because it was in his rider or whatever. And it was, I don't know, a couple $100. And it sat in my basement for 6 months. And my wife was like, when are you going to start DJing for me? So I started DJing for her initially. And then recorded it, started putting them out on Mixcloud. And then we moved to New York. And then I did a lot there. And then COVID happened. And so, you know. But hopefully I'll be able to start playing out again. I very, very much enjoy being on stage. And I love being a DJ too because like nobody can talk to you. It's wonderful. So you get to be at a party, nobody has to say anything to you. You don't have to say anything to anybody.
I had a friend who said, my ideal world is I just want everyone to love me and leave me alone.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And DJ's like a good spot for that, dude. Yeah. And like my birthday is New Year's Day. So like New Year's Eve is always like a really like emotionally contentious time for me. It's not a good night. So now I just DJ every New Year's Eve and I don't have to deal with my own emotions. I just focus on work.
Which is really the secret to a happy life.
Absolutely. Super healtly. Super healthy.
That's great.
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay, if people want to get a hold of you, should they?
Twitter.com/Chris Bergman is probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. I'll actually check it and look at it. Or Chris@GuyleeGames.com. But my inbox is iffy.
Sure.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you for doing this.
Love you, man.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, I hope you liked that video. If so, maybe watch another right here. Why not? Also, make sure to hit subscribe down below. Thanks for watching.